Hello and welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint Show. I am your host, Jay Jones. Black Entrepreneur Blueprint was created specifically to educate and inspire Black entrepreneurs to launch, build, and grow successful businesses. Join us as we help build an economic power base in the Black community by promoting business ownership. If you are currently an entrepreneur or want to be an entrepreneur, we invite you to join us every week here at Black Entrepreneur Blueprint.
Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint, episode number 347. I'm your host, Jay Jones, and today we have another outstanding and informative show in store for you. Today's show topic is you're trying to sell a product or service when you should be building a media company. You're trying to sell a product or service when you should be building a media company. Now, last week, episode 346, I talk about mindset shifts. And this is a key mindset shift that you really need to grasp hold of if you want to be successful. So most times we always think about selling our product or service, be it via e-commerce or whatever. Now, if you change your mindset to think about creating a small or a micro media company, this whole concept is going to have a drastic change in a positive way on your business. Now, before we get into today's show, I just want to share a few things with the BEB family. First and foremost, I want to welcome all first-time listeners to Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. Welcome to the BEB family. Please stick around until the end of today's broadcast, and I'm going to share all my social media contact information and my resource links, such as the link to my new book, A New Black Wall Street, Circulating the Black Dollar Worldwide by Building Successful E-Commerce Businesses. Also, two platforms I've created to help circulate dollars in the worldwide Black economy, BeSmartByBlack.com and HireBlackFreelancers.com. And my new rebooted and rebranded BEB Academy. So you can go to BEBacademy.com and get 5 free days inside the Black Entrepreneur Blueprint Academy. But let's get back to today's episode, and we're discussing you're trying to sell a product or service when you should be building a media company. And we're going to talk about some of the benefits and some of the mind shift changes that you need to have and why you need to really start to think like this. Now, on this episode, guys, I'm going to be going deep. So if you want to pause this, you may want to grab a pen and paper to be able to take some notes. If you're not able to do that, make sure you go to the homepage, blackentrepreneurblueprint.com. And on the top left, you're going to see the BEB Lifestyle or Black Entrepreneur Blueprint Lifestyle newsletter. Now, the show notes are actually going to be coming out in the newsletter every Monday. So for your latest show notes, make sure that you go on the homepage, blackentrepreneurblueprint.com, top left corner if you're looking on a laptop. If not, you'll see it. You'll see the icon, Black Entrepreneur Blueprint Lifestyle, and you can enroll for the free newsletter. The newsletter comes out twice a week. Monday morning, it'll have the show notes, and also on Thursday morning. And what that is, it's news for Black entrepreneurs and also some links and some quality content in there for you. So if you can't write notes down today, make sure you sign up for the BEB Lifestyle newsletter. All right, let's get ready for today's show, family. You're trying to sell a product or service when you should be building a media company. So the first thing I want to talk about, family, is some questions that you want to ask yourself. Number one, how many of you are struggling to sell your product or service online? If you're struggling to sell your product or service online, make sure you lock in and tap into this episode, because it's really going to change your whole outlook, and it's definitely going to change your pockets. Okay. Now, and if you're selling, are the ad costs making it impossible for you to be profitable? So I always talk about this cost of money to advertise. So if you're selling a $10 product, retail price, and it costs you $2, that means if you have no advertising costs, you'll make a profit of $8. But what happens if you have to spend $5, $6, or $7 to advertise that product or service and then be able to sell it? So if it costs you $2 and it costs you $7 to advertise, that means you've expended $9 and you're only making 10. That means you're only making $1. So are your ad costs making it impossible for you to be profitable? Also, what happens if you could sell your product or service with virtually no advertising costs and you can control the customer experience from top to bottom? So that would be a major benefit. So if you have a quote unquote micro media company or some type of platform that you connect with your people with, and you're able to sell your products and or services without spending money on advertising, how important would that be for you? Also, not just selling, guys, but controlling the experience, the customer experience. So when you sell on Amazon, you may be very profitable. You don't control that experience. Amazon does. So if somebody goes on Amazon and buys 8 things and one of those things is your product or service, what happens when it gets to their house? It's in a box with an Amazon box with an Amazon label on it, and Amazon is being promoted. You have no say-so in the customer experience. That's why I always talk about building your own platforms to be able to sell your products and or your services. So let's take a look at some of the benefits right away before we get into this. So once again, we're talking about stop trying to sell your product or service and start trying to focus on building a small or micro media company. Nothing crazy now. I'm not talking about, building out a Bleacher Report or something like that. But I'm going to go deep today, family, and I really need y'all to pay attention to this. So benefit number 1, you control your vertical by creating built-in distribution for your product or service. You can control your vertical from the production, the manufacturing, and distribution. And this is controlling the vertical by creating built-in distribution. So once again, that means less money on ad spend. How many of you have been spending money on Facebook, Instagram, and all these ad platforms and not being able to recoup your money? Now, trust me, as a coach, I see it all the time. That's one of the biggest issues that my clients have or people that I talk about. Man, I'm not making money. I'm spending money on Facebook, but I'm not making the money back. So one of the benefits of building a micro media company or controlling that is you're controlling the vertical by creating built-in distribution for your product or services. Benefit number 2, you have way more monetization options when you think or change your mindset as opposed to selling a product or service to then actually think about becoming a mini media company. And we'll talk about what that means. So now, do you want to have one product or service to sell or the opportunity to sell multiple products or services? And benefit number 3, you can have people pay you to actually be on your platform. Okay, so they'll actually subsidize you for selling your own product or service. So you're really piggybacking on that mini or micro media company that you're creating. Let's just talk about what a mini or micro media company looks like. So you could have a podcast, you could have a YouTube channel, you could have a blog, you could have a newsletter. There are various different things or components of a media company. And so what you need to do is you need to find out or determine what is the best major platform for you to connect with your prospective customers. Okay, so it may be a blog post, right? So, or if you like to talk and it's easier for you to do audio, it may be a podcast. If you like video, then create a YouTube channel. But don't just stop there. Have additional components that people can connect with you on. All right, social media, obviously. You want to do that. I wouldn't necessarily call that a media company per se, but you do have to have the components of social media. So we talked about the benefits of thinking like or acting like a mini media company versus just selling a product or service. And one of the things that you have to look at when you're selling a product or service is what context does the prospective customer see you in? What context do they see you or your product or service in? So if you have a website and you're running traffic from Facebook, say, to a sales page, the context that the customer sees you in or prospective customer sees you in is, man, they're just trying to sell something, right? It's not the same as if you're reading an article or you're researching something, and then there's a link within that research that has the solution to one of your problems. And so what I want to talk about real quick, guys, is intentional attention versus forced attention. Intentional attention versus forced attention, and the psychology behind that. How does forced attention make you feel versus how does intentional attention make you feel? Okay, so let's take a look at what each one of these is, okay? So forced attention. Say, for example, you're watching a YouTube video. And during these videos, a lot of times there'll be advertisements and commercials coming up, probably about things that are related to the video, obviously, but they may not be things that you're really interested in. You wait for the 5 seconds, you hit the skip. Same thing when you're watching television and your favorite show is on and there are commercials in there. That's forced attention. You weren't looking for those commercials. They were forced upon you. Okay, whereas intentional attention is when you go somewhere or you're seeking out something and it's intentional. A podcast, for example, is very intentional. Unlike YouTube videos where you can be looking at one YouTube video and then as soon as that's over, it's going to give you additional recommendations. You go on to look for something for 10 minutes. 2 hours later, you're still on YouTube, but you weren't intending to look at those particular type videos. Whereas podcasting is very intentional, meaning it's not going to pop up anywhere. You have to go and seek that out. And when you're seeking that out, the psychology behind that is totally different as opposed to somebody forcing something on you. So just imagine that you went to a conference, right? And you know how a lot of these conferences have different breakout rooms. So imagine you had the opportunity. Somebody said, you know what? I'm going to make you go to this breakout room and I'm going to make you watch this presentation on how flowers germinate. Or you can go to a breakout room that has something that you're interested in. Your whole demeanor and your psychology is going to be totally different. When you're going into the room that you don't want to be in, you're kind of standoffish. I don't even want to be here. I'm not concerned with what they're talking about. And that's forced attention. Now, when it's intentional attention, that means that you chose it. You chose to listen to a podcast. You chose to watch a TV show. Even though you may choose to watch a TV show, you're still going to get some forced attention by commercials. So you would rather, from the psychological standpoint of a customer or prospective customer, you would rather get their attention for them to have intentional attention versus forced attention. So you have to understand, do they see your product or service in the context of giving value or information, or do they look at it in the context of, hey, this guy's just trying to sell me something? So you have to be cognizant of that. And building a media platform or quote unquote a micro media company allows you to create intentional attention, because people may be going to your blog site, your newsletter, your website, your podcast, your YouTube channel, your books, your white papers, your studies or reports. It's an intentional move. It's not that they're watching something and all of a sudden an ad comes up for something else. So it's about positioning, guys. So we're talking about today, family, you're trying to sell a product or service when you should be building a media company. And I just gave you some of the benefits. Control of the vertical by creating built-in distribution. Way more monetization options as opposed to just your product or service. And we're going to go into some real life examples. Also, have people pay you to be on your own platform. So you'll be able to monetize and piggyback off of other people that want to come onto your media site. So let's look at it like this. So why are you advertising on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter? Okay, those are media companies. You're advertising on them because you don't have a media company. You're trying to find prospective customers and attract them to your product or service or whatever you're selling. If you had a built-in media company, guess what? Built in around the products or services you're selling, guess what? You don't need to go to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or things of that nature unless you want to. And remember, the cost of advertising is so integral in terms of what your profitability is going to be on your product or service. So once again, if it costs you, $25 to get a sale and you're only making $30 on the product, that means you only have a profit of $5. Versus if it costs you no dollars to get that customer, then you made $30. And so this is a big difference, guys. So the mindset shift has to be from just selling a one-off product or service to create a micro media company and also an ecosystem that you can eat off of. Now, before I give you some questions that you need to ask yourself about building a small media company, I want to talk to you real quick about podcasting, because I know podcasting in the last several years has been exploding and is growing like crazy. And if you're trying to eat off of a podcast, it is very hard. A podcast can be one of the components of your media company. And I had a conversation with Libsyn, who is a podcast host, which is one of the oldest podcast host companies out there. So it's just like YouTube hosts videos, Libsyn hosts podcasts. So you don't want to have all of that bandwidth on your website. So you input. So if you go to my site and you click on the actual podcast, it's actually hosted on Libsyn, just like a video on your website would be hosted on YouTube. And so they are trying to get me to start a network, meaning a group of podcast shows. And they were talking to me about the numbers and what the real numbers are in podcasting. So, of course, you have like the Joe Rogans and shows like that. They get millions of downloads per episode. And there is a big difference, guys, between podcasting and YouTube. And I'll talk about that real quick. But I just want to give you this basis of information about a podcast. So they're saying that the median number of downloads per episode, which is the middle value, okay, is averages, it's 125 people or downloads per episode. Only 125 downloads per episode. That is the median, okay? Now, if you take all of the podcasts, like your million download podcasts and the people that are just starting, the average downloads is 1,300. Okay, 1,300. But that's including Joe Rogan and all these other guys. But the actual median number of downloads of a podcast is 125 per episode. So when people see that, podcasting is a great outlet, but you're not going to monetize that right off the rip. Now, with YouTube, you may get more views, but the difference, and I think I mentioned this on last week's podcast, the difference between YouTube views and podcast downloads are totally different. Two different mediums, two different ball games. The average person that listens to a podcast listens to at least 80% of the podcast. They're much more engaged. And once again, it's an intentional attention. It's not forced attention. It's intentional. You got to go tap into the podcast. Now with YouTube, like I said, you may go and check out a YouTube and you see that it may have, 30,000 views. But the question is, what is the engagement? You may have 30,000 views, but people may drop off after the first 5 minutes. So it's a different metric. And so studies have shown that most YouTube videos, they have a major drop off after the first few minutes. So even though you may get a whole lot of views, it's the engagement that matters. I had my daughter on a couple of months ago, and she was just talking about social media and engagement. So really what companies look for is the engagement. It's not necessarily the number of people that you have, but it is the engagement that they have with the actual media, property, the asset, be it the podcast or the YouTube video. But I just wanted to say, if you're trying to start a podcast and you think it's going to go through the roof right away. It's not. Not that it can't, but you got to be prepared to put in that work. And I'm going to tell you, a podcast is a great part of a media company. But we want to talk about right now, in terms of building and thinking about building a micro media company or a mini media company, there's a couple of different questions that you need to ask yourself before you start building this media company. First question is, what is your topic or subject matter? What is your topic or subject matter? So if you look at Bleacher Report, right? Bleacher Report, for those of you who aren't familiar, it's all sports, all types of different sports. So their topic or subject matter is sports. Next question, where can I find my target market? Are there specific ways I can connect with this market via Facebook groups, organizations, social media, using hashtags, etc.? So basically, where can you find that market? Is it accessible? Okay. Now, if you're looking to create a micro media company or a media platform in a market that's not that accessible, so it could be black guys age 35 to 55 that love beekeeping. That might be a hard way, a hard market to attack. And it may not be, because I'm just making this up on the fly. But where can you find your target market? The next question you want to ask yourself is, what type of quality content can you provide to that market? Your own content and curated content. So once again, curated content is content that you attribute to somebody else. And so you could have curated content like most sites do. They don't write all their content. So if you're looking at a website and it says AP, Associated Press, that's content they curated from Associated Press. So what type of quality content can you provide to the market? Okay, next question you want to ask yourself is, what's the main way I'm going to connect with my marketplace? Is it a podcast? Is it YouTube? Is it a blog? It depends on the type of market you're dealing with. Okay, and once again, when you're talking about having the mindset of a media company, media normally is multi-dimensional. So even though I have a podcast, I still have a YouTube channel. But the majority of my connections or downloads come through the podcast. Okay. So next question is, how often are you going to connect with your audience? So once again, Black Entrepreneur Blueprint, every Monday morning, 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, you getting some new heat. So the BEB family, they know every Monday morning they can tune into a new episode. So, how often are you going to connect with your actual market? Next question is, what problems or concerns does your market have? What problems or concerns does your market have? Once again, one of the easiest ways to make money, family, is solving a problem. Okay, solving a problem. My feet hurt. All right, I got a problem to solve that. Cool. I don't care what you look like, where you live, or whatever. If you're trying to solve this problem that I got, I'm with it. So what problem or concerns does your market have? Next question you want to ask yourself, what type of products or services do they want and need? Want and need. There's a big difference. A lot of people need things, but human nature, I'm telling you, people will get what they want a lot of times before what they need. So they may need, solution A, but they want solution B. So you give them what they want. All right. Remember, you're always selling transformation. How do you transform this person or this situation from this to that? All right. So remember, guys, also, this is a lot of stuff. You can just go to blackentrepreneurblueprint.com. And so that's the homepage of the site. Top left-hand corner, if you're in the laptop, it'll be BEB Lifestyle newsletter. And all of the show notes will be there because this is a lot to write down. So we just talked about what type of products or services do they want and need. And the last question you want to ask yourself, how can I serve their needs with my product or services and other products and or services? How can you service their needs? How can you take care of them? How can you serve them? So when you're looking to build a media company, these are some of the questions that you need to ask yourself. So when you build it, it's going to be done correctly. So now let's take a look at an example of a media company, and I'm making this up on the fly, right? So your product, just say, is a line of fashionable athletic clothing that people can work out in and look good. I think they got those out there for women, Fabletics and some of those other ones. Lululemon maybe has that same type of mission statement. So you're trying to build or sell a line of fashionable athletic clothing that make you look good, and at the same time that you can work out in them. So here's what most people are going to do. Most people are going to create a site, and all it's going to have up there is their athletic clothing. There's no context around it. And remember how I was talking about context. How do they see your product or service? Do they see you as just somebody just trying to sell them something? Or are you trying to provide quality information? It's almost like, how do you frame the sales process? Is it, here it is right here in your face. You want this? What you want, I got it. Or is it a little bit softer where you're providing context or content around your product or service, and now people are intentionally going to look at it or check it out versus kind of throwing it in their face? That's where we get back to the intentional attention versus the forced attention. All right. And so this is what we're trying to create, guys. You can do several things to create that type of context. Number one, if we're talking about a fashionable athletic clothing line, you can create a product review site for the most comfortable and fashionable athletic clothing. All right. So this is a site that people can go to, and they can compare the different athletic clothing, and you can make money via affiliate sales for the other products or services. And obviously you're going to review your products or services. So if they click on your link, you're going to make that money directly. All right. So product review site, that's part of a media company. Okay. It's not that hard to create. Another thing you could do, you could have a fashion or style blog for people that want to look good and be healthy. So how does your athletic apparel come in there? Most people that want to be healthy, they're going to be exercising, okay? So you could create a blog. You have a fashion or style blog for people that want to look good and be healthy. And so the content in that type of blog could be anything. It could be food, it could be diet, it could be exercise, and obviously it'll be clothing, okay? That's another media property, okay? So you can have a product review site, you can have a blog. Now, you can have a weekly newsletter that's focused on living a healthy lifestyle that includes a section on fashionable activewear or clothing. That's another media asset. It's another media property. Like I said, family, we're not talking about building, the new Netflix. We're talking about building a micro media company. And the mindset shift comes from, hey, let me just put this product page up here and try to run traffic and sell my product, to now let me soft pedal it a little bit by creating context around my product and or service. Content and context. Another way you can create or help add to your media company is, say you have a YouTube channel component attached to your blog, and you could do review things and you can interview people or whatever. But everything that you're doing, you got to start looking at it as creating a media type company. Now, I'm not saying you got to do podcast, blog, YouTube channel, newsletter, and all of that. Pick out one or two that makes sense for you and makes sense for your audience. Okay, and here's something else that I want to give y'all a heads up on. Remember, you do not have to let people know that you own the media entity. Okay, people don't have to know that you own the media entity. Do you know who owns Bleacher Report? Do you know who owns TechCrunch? Now, you can find out if you want to, but most people aren't going to do that. So what you want to do is your brand can become the industry trusted publication or place to go. So you don't have to be attached to your brand. Okay. So for example, you would probably love, if you were selling sports apparel, or say you were doing fantasy gambling or whatever, sports gambling. You would love to be able to get on a Bleacher Report, a story by Bleacher Report, wouldn't you? Oh yeah, you got this gambling outfit that you're running, and man, Bleacher Report's going to do a story on me. That's you can't pay for that. So why can't you become the Bleacher Report in your industry? You may not become that big, but the whole thing is, family, is remember that people are going to be coming to you and they're going to be looking at your quote unquote micro or mini media company as a place to get quality content and information. And if that quality content and information leads them to your product or service, don't you think that just makes sense? Remember that some of the benefits I was talking about, guys. Controlling the vertical by creating built-in distribution for your product or service. Your micro media company is creating built-in distribution. If you are you're selling a vegan product and you have a vegan newsletter, you think that makes sense for putting your product in or service into the vegan newsletter, right? Also, benefit number 2, way more monetization options. All right. So now, in addition to that vegan newsletter where you're selling your product or service, you can find other companies that have vegan products, could be vegan clothing, that want to piggyback on your media, your micro media company. Remember, the only reason, guys, you're paying for ads is because you haven't created your own media company. Every person or every platform that you're paying for ads on, that's a media company. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. If you want to be on somebody's blog post, if you want to get shouted out on somebody's IG, they do a story about you. That's media. So it's not something that's out of the realm of possibility. You know, I get hit up all the time in my DM. Hey, you want me to promote a story for you on Instagram? It's $40. Guess what? That's a media company. That's a media company. And benefit number 3, you're having people to pay for you, which will subsidize your own ads. If you own that vegan newsletter, right? It's not costing you anything. You're making money. You're making money off of your own product sales, and then you can piggyback off of the other vendors that actually are selling on your site too, or paying for ad space. So that's why I'm telling you guys, the mindset shift has to be from I'm selling a product or a service to change the context of your thinking and the positioning of your product or service, and start looking at building a media company, a micro media company, mini media company. But you got to start thinking of it like that, because everywhere you're advertising and spending your dollars, guys, is with a media company. I don't care if it's radio, television, newspaper, magazine, social media, Facebook, Instagram, native advertising. The people, you're spending money to get the eyeball. So Gary Vaynerchuk, right? So Gary V talks about people are vying for attention. Attention is the new currency. But remember, there's 2 types of attention. Intentional attention versus forced attention. So when you're building media assets or media properties, you're creating intentional attention. You're not forcing that on anybody else. You're not forcing somebody to watch your videos because you've created a media platform that has different media assets that attract the people that you want to sell to. It's simple, guys. Don't make it harder than it seems. It's very simple. You want to start changing the mindset to think like a media company. Once again, I wish we were doing this live in a live audience. I can't wait till COVID goes back down, because when I go back out on the road and start doing my workshops and talks, I ask people, how much money are you spending on advertising, and is it profitable? If it's yes, stand up. If it's no, sit down. And I'm telling you, most of the people sit down because they're spending the money and they're not recouping the money because they have to rely on somebody else's media. It's common sense, y'all. If you can control the vertical and create built-in distribution for your product or service, Why wouldn't you do it? And no, it's not going to happen overnight. But just think of the economies of scale, the money that you're going to be saving. I want you to look at your advertising budget right now if you're doing any advertising. If you're not doing any advertising, you probably aren't making that much money unless you've been entrenched and you got word of mouth to bring you customers. But most people or most companies have to advertise in some form or fashion. Or there's other currency like partnerships, strategic partnerships, bartering, and things of that nature. But every place you're advertising or thinking about advertising is a media entity or an asset, a media asset. Create your own media assets. It's funny because I told y'all I have tons and tons of websites. So I think at my last count, I'm up to 213. Some of them I let go because I know I'm never going to do anything with them. Websites, man, those are real estate assets. It's digital real estate. So let me give you another example. I haven't done much with this yet, but let me give you another example of how I can create a media company based on these websites and this whole concept or network that I've actually just built. And I meant to say domain names, not websites. I have over 200 plus domain names, and that's the real estate, the digital real estate I'm talking about. But let's talk about a network that I've created just of domain names, which probably has a decent value right now. So I started this test newsletter called Philly Sports Roundup, right? And it's all about all the Philadelphia pro sports teams and some of the major college teams like Villanova and Temple and whoever is hot at the time. So the Sixers, the Eagles, the Flyers, the Phillies, and any of the college teams out there. So Philly is really a football town. So our biggest team is the Eagles. 24/7, 365, you're going to have Eagles talk on both of the sports radio stations. So here's what I did. I looked at the top 10 cities in the U.S. with population, and I'm not going in any order. And I said, you know what? I can create a network just like I'm doing with Philly Sports Roundup with all of these other different cities. So I have Atlanta Sports Roundup, Chicago Sports Roundup, Dallas Sports Roundup, Detroit Sports Roundup, Houston Sports Roundup, LA Sports Roundup, New York Sports Roundup, Philly Sports Roundup, Phoenix Sports Roundup, San Antonio Sports Roundup, San Diego Sports Roundup, San Jose Sports Roundup. So those are the top 10 demographic areas in terms of population in the United States. Okay, so I'm not finished yet, but just remember that. Also, these are the other domain names I purchased. Pro Football Roundup, NFL Sports Roundup, NBA Sports Roundup, NBA Roundup, Fight Sports Roundup, SEC Football Roundup, Sports Roundup Network. All right. So in addition to having the top 10 cities in population with the Sports Roundup, I got Pro Football Roundup, NFL Sports Roundup, NBA Sports Roundup, NBARoundup.com, Fight Sports Roundup, which could be boxing, MMA, SEC Football Roundup, which SEC college football is no joke. It's the best conference out there. And then I have Sports Roundup Network if I want to create a network. So just imagine if I just packaged all of these domain names, right? Nothing on them, but I put it out for sale. I guarantee you I could make money from a media company that wants to create assets in these actual areas. So for example, if I created newsletters for all of the top 10 areas and, using digital newsletter software, I use Rasa, RASA.io, Rasa.io. You set it and forget it. It'll bring in content from the different sources that you create. So with my Philly Sports Roundup, I use all the local Philly newspapers. I use the local, the couple of Eagles websites. I also use the local news, 6 ABC, NBC 10, and Channel 3. So I gather sources that cover Philly sports, all Philly sports. I use the Philadelphia Eagles their own site, the Flyers site, the Sixers site, the Phillies site, and I probably have about 14 or 16 sites that bring in content daily for that Philly Sports Roundup newsletter. I can do the same thing in all of these other cities and start signing up people to the newsletter. Okay? Do you think that would be valuable to a company that's in the sports arena? Do you think that would be valuable to companies that are selling gambling services? Do you think that would be valuable to companies that sponsor, I know it's COVID now, sponsor these trips to, say, the Super Bowl or following your team? Like, I used to travel to a lot of away games for the Eagles. And I used to use this one company that used to do the Eagles vacation. So you would get the hotel, the airfare. They'd hook up a party when you got to the other team's location and all of that. Think about the different monetization aspects. Now, I could have my own products, okay? So I could have licensing rights to sell Philadelphia Eagles licensed apparel, T-shirts, and all of that type of stuff. Think about the NBA Roundup.com or NBA Sports Roundup. I got both of them. Nothing but content for NBA, right? It could be podcasting. And I'll talk about building a network shortly. But just think about building a media company. Just this literally, like I said, I guarantee you, I don't know what I could sell it for, but all of these different city sports roundups, I package that up and I find a company that actually is looking to do something in that space. Or even better, if I start doing the newsletters and start creating the content and also start getting subscribers, it's more valuable. You know, I could sub out, say you're out in LA, right? And you have a podcast about the Lakers. You know what, man, I'm going to put you on this LA Sports Roundup, in my network. So now, Joe out there in LA who has that actual podcast that focuses on the Lakers, they go to lasportsroundup.com. They can listen to the podcast. They can get the newsletter. They can have a YouTube channel, all types of things. This is what I'm talking about, family, about building a midi or micro media company. Now, I don't sell anything in this space per se, but I could sell a whole lot of stuff. Just think about SECfootballroundup.com, right? All of the teams in the SEC, the Alabama, LSU, Georgia, all of the major top dogs out there in college football. Man, that's crazy. So now you got rabid fans. Say I get that licensing to sell Alabama goods and services. I have people from each of the SEC schools that doing podcasts. They're on this network, the SEC Football Roundup. Now, think even larger. If I take all of this content, all of these sports roundups, Atlanta, Chicago, New York, Philly, LA, and I created a sports roundup network with all of these media assets combined, and I have a company like Barstool Sports, all of these, new media companies, and their assets in there, guess what? That's valuable. But let's even bring it back. We're talking something that's a little different, but let's bring it back to, say, for example, the the Philly Sports Roundup, the different products and services I could sell on there to monetize. In addition to my own, which could be T-shirts or Philly sports paraphernalia, what do you think, or who do you think would want to advertise on there? We got casinos in Philly, Atlantic City, Delaware. You think they would want to advertise on there? They got gambling on there. They have car dealerships all over the place. So this is what I'm talking about. So when I give you these questions, and I'm going to go over these questions real quick again, but before we do that, let me give you my social media contact information and my resource links. Then I'm going to go over these questions real quick and start thinking about how you can create your micro or your mini media company. All right, at the top of the show, family, I mentioned my new book is out, A New Black Wall Street, Circulating the Black Dollar Worldwide by Building Successful E-Commerce Businesses. you can go to anewblackwallstreet.com, pick yourself up a copy, print version $14.95, digital version $9.95. Now, if you need additional assistance building a successful, sustainable e-commerce business, you can go to my new flagship course, BBAElite.com, Brand Builder Academy Elite.com. Go to BBAElite.com. Use the coupon code BBAElite100. Save $100 off of the program. Now, this is a 14-week, all-inclusive, intensive program that takes you from point A to point Z in building a successful brand, be it a physical products brand or a digital products brand. BBAElite.com. I also mentioned at the top of the show 2 platforms I've created to circulate dollars in the worldwide black economy: BeSmartByBlack.com and HireBlackFreelancers.com. So if you are a black product producer and you want to sell your products to black consumers worldwide, upload your product information to BeSmartByBlack.com. It is free, and connect with black consumers who may purchase your products. Now, if you are a freelancer, if you do anything on Fiverr.com or Freelancer.com, upload your information to HireBlackFreelancers.com. HIRE blackfreelancers.com. Once again, it is free to upload your information, and you can connect with black consumers and black businesses that want to hire black freelancers. I also mentioned at the top of the show, my new rebranded, rebooted Black Entrepreneur Blueprint Academy is back, family. You can go to BEBacademy.com. You can get 5 free days inside the academy. That's where I keep the majority of my online courses and trainings and masterminds. So go, and it's updated every month with new content. So you can go 5 days free. Go to BEBacademy.com. Just sign up and you'll have access to everything for 5 days free. Also, don't forget, family, it's a lot of content in today's show and in most shows. So make sure you go to the website, blackentrepreneurblueprint.com, and look for the BEB Lifestyle newsletter and the actual show notes. Everything I'm talking about today and the links and everything else will be in those. Now, it will only be on that Monday episode. So the newsletter goes out Mondays and Thursdays. So the show drops Monday. Make sure that you register for the newsletter ASAP. So that's BEBlifestyle.com. But just go to the homepage. You'll see it in the top left. Now, social media contact information. And also everything I said you can find at BEBconnect.com. So all of the resource links and my social media contact information, what I'm about to give you now. Anything long, family, hit me on my email, jjones@blackentrepreneurblueprint.com. That's JAYJONES at blackentrepreneurblueprint.com. Facebook, hit me on Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. Twitter, jjones001, JAYJONES. Instagram, jjones4real. That's JAYJONES, the number 4. REAL. YouTube, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, family. You have additional content on YouTube that is not on the podcast. And yes, the podcast is on YouTube, but there's additional content. So go to YouTube, type in Black Entrepreneur Blueprint, and make sure you hit the subscribe button. Also, LinkedIn, make sure you connect with me there. Just look for J Jones Black Entrepreneur Blueprint. Clubhouse, if you're on Clubhouse, connect with me on Clubhouse. I'm at I am J Jones, at I am J Jones. Once again, family, the easiest thing to do is just go to BEBconnect.com. It's a page on my website, and everything I just talked about is there. Now, today we're talking about you're trying to sell a product or service when you should be building a media company. And I just want to get back to some of the questions that you need to ask yourself about building a small media company. All right. Question 1 was, what is your topic or subject matter? What are you going to talk about? Okay. Number 2, where can I find my target market? Are there specific ways I can connect with that target market, be it Facebook groups, organizations, social media, hashtags, or whatever? Next question is, what type of quality content can I provide to that market? Remember, the content can be your own content, or it could be curated content, which is content from somebody else. Next question is, what is the main way I'm going to connect with that market? Is it going to be a podcast, YouTube, blog, etc.? or a combination thereof. Also, how often are you going to connect with them? What is your frequency? People need to know when they can expect to hear from you and get content from you. Next question is, what problems or concerns does that market have? What problems or concerns does that market have? Next question, what type of products and services do they want and need? What type of products and services do they want and need? And remember, you're selling transformation. How can you transform them from this to that? And what does that look like? Problem, solution, result. Problem identified. The solution is your product or service. The result, what happens when they use your product or service? And the last question is, how can I serve their needs with my products or services and others' products or services? So once again, identify what some of the problems are and then be able to help solve those problems. So guys, we're talking about a mindset shift. You're probably doing most of this stuff right now. So if you're out there and you have a business, you probably have social media accounts. You may have a blog. I'm sure you're going to have a website. But what you want to do, family, is change the mindset. The mindset of, I'm not just selling a product or service. I'm creating a media company. Because once again, guys, every company that you're looking to advertise on is a media company. Anybody can create a media company today. Anybody. That's why I say, man, it's all about perspective, because years ago, before the internet, if you didn't have the money to advertise on radio, TV, magazine, newspaper, you were in trouble. Now you have access to millions of people, from your fingertips, right on your phone. And so those people are looking for quality content. So start thinking about how you can fill that void. Remember the benefits, guys. Controlling the vertical by creating built-in distribution for your product or service. Duh, that's a no-brainer. Controlling your vertical from the production, manufacturing to the distribution. Controlling your vertical by creating a built-in distribution for your product or service. So that means you're spending less money advertising because you've already got the network. Number 2 benefit, way more monetization options. Yeah, you're looking to sell your products or services, but guess what? Anything else you can sell in there too? Yeah, it is. It's a whole bunch of stuff. Remember, guys, and I say it all the time, but this is important. You can only sell 6 types of things. Your physical products, your digital products, your services, somebody else's physical products, somebody else's digital products, and somebody else's services. And benefit number 3, have people pay you and subsidize your own business. So if you have a newsletter or blog post or blog, and people want to advertise, or a podcast or YouTube channel, and people want to advertise, guess what? You're making money now. So you may want to expand the reach of your newsletter. So guess what? Yeah, you spend some money on Facebook. But if you're getting a couple $100 from somebody else that wants to be in your newsletter, then guess what? They're subsidizing you getting your products and services out there. Because your newsletter is going to have your products or services in there in the form of an article, or in the form of an ad, or in the form of a sponsorship. And I'm just using the newsletter as an example. Same thing with YouTube. So really change your mindset, guys, because I'm telling you, there's tons of you out there struggling to try to sell your product or service. Trust me, I've been there, done that, and I talk to people every day that have great ideas, great products or services, but they're not making money because they're not creating intentional attention. They're creating forced attention. And they're also not controlling the context of how people see your offers or your products and or services. Once again, do they see your products or service in a context of giving value or information, or are they looking at you more out of, these guys are just trying to sell me something? So you have to control that, and once again, if you are using outside media to sell, are your ad costs making it impossible for you to be profitable? I see it all the time, guys. And I know you got to tweak your advertising. You're not just going to come out here and all of a sudden, bam, you got this down to a science. But the less you can spend on advertising means the more you're going to profit. It's just a function of the numbers. If you don't have to spend any money advertising, then guess what? You're going to be making money, more money. And also, what happens if you could sell your product or service with virtually no advertising cost at all, and you can control your customer experience from top to bottom? That customer experience is important. Okay? Do you want your products just to go out in a box with Amazon on it, or do you want them to go out from your website with your own box that you've labeled and marketed? And so once again, the reason that we use these other platforms is because we have to. We haven't created our own, and I don't think we've really thought about what it takes to create your own. Okay? Once again, there's forced attention and there's actually intentional attention, and that's what you want to focus on. I say it each and every week, guys. Before we close on out, man, this podcast is rocking and rolling. 340 plus episodes over 6.5 years, and I attribute that to the BEB family. I love you guys. I appreciate you. Please continue to spread the word about the podcast and the blog and the whole ecosystem. Once again, it's about building an economic power base in the Black community. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about us. It's about us building and supporting Black-owned businesses. And once again, guys, if we do that and we start utilizing our resources, our monies, our time, our skills, our ingenuity, and we use it for the community, not just for us personally, but share that and be able to help each other and support each other, then it's only going to get better that much faster. Love you guys. See you same time next week. Peace.